the report that I did and the bullying allegation that I talked about. Give me your insight on that and how, like you said, you disagree that this is a trend and that Parsons handles bullying allegations whenever they present themselves.
Yeah. Well, of course, I can't comment on any specific student issue because of privacy, but I can tell you that when we are aware of issues, we address them. We are here to support students. It can be challenging when we don't have control over things that happen online outside of school, and then when kids come back to campus, they're carrying that with them, so it does become something we need to address. But we can't necessarily prevent those things from happening outside of school. We're always trying to find a way to not only hold students accountable for misbehavior, but also help them learn to do better in the future. So we have to address both of those things at the same time.
And so talking about the new-ish world of cyberbullying and kids picking on each other from their homes, I imagine there are some philosophies or things that the school does to try and instill in kids that obviously that's not okay, that even though you're away from campus and you don't have a teacher watching you or a principal watching you, the bullying over the phone is something that is not tolerated. Can you touch on what your school district does to try and enforce cyberbullying?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, next week is Digital Citizenship Week. So during that week in particular, every one of our schools for kids in 4th through 8th grade, they get lessons specific to cyberbullying. What is it? How do you protect yourself from it? What do you do if it happens to you? You know, because you've got to let an adult know. Those are all really important skills for kids to learn. And then trying to really provide good opportunities when they're face-to-face, because it's really easy to say mean, unkind things when you're not looking at that person. And so that really exacerbates the problem. So we also provide parent education, because I empathize with parents and how difficult it is in this day and age to navigate all those things. So we actually tonight have the first in a 2-part series on navigating that whole world of online behavior. You know, I mean, we would never give our 12-year-old the keys to the car, right? And say, go have fun. But online, they can be exposed to all kinds of things. And there's a lot of ugliness out there. So we want them to know how to stay safe and still have fun.
Tonight is, like you said, for parents to kind of get a better understanding.
Correct.
Tomorrow?
This Thursday and next Thursday.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's address an elephant in the room here, which is, since COVID, the dynamic of school and teaching is much different. Kids are different. Everyone's different since COVID. But I want to know, in your opinion, as a superintendent, have you seen tendencies in the way kids act change since they've returned full-time to campus? Or do you think these issues have always been around? They've just been maybe more exacerbated now?
Mm-hmm. I think it's somewhat exacerbated because they were apart for a while. So some of those things are more at the surface, but when it comes down to it, the needs of kids are still the same. And when you think about young adolescents, what really matters to them? Their friends. That's probably the most important thing, because they're trying to figure out who they are and how they fit into the world, and all of that becomes much more important. And so they have a very fragile sense of self right now, and that's why those hurtful things have so much more of an impact. And we all need to take responsibility in helping to protect our kids. And I think sometimes it's hard for parents to know, how do I help set boundaries for my child and still allow them some freedom? So it's complicated, but it's doable.
To address now specifically the gentleman I spoke with, and then the comments that were shared underneath that post that you're aware of, what would you say, if you could talk to these people and let them know your guys' side of it? What would you want to say to Richard and to these parents that are voicing their frustration? What would you want them to know and understand about what you guys are doing? Yeah.
Well, I certainly empathize with the frustrations and the challenges that exist in the world today. But I can assure you that when we become aware of issues, we will address them, that we have a process for how we discipline, and we take into account the impact on someone else that actions have, what the history has been like, and all of that comes into play with what that discipline ends up looking like. And a part of that discipline is also about trying to restore the harm that's been done and help kids learn and grow through that. Young adolescents make a lot of mistakes, and they need our support more than ever.
You touched on cyberbullying in the workshops, if you will, that you'll give to parents and students to make them understand. But say at the start of the year, is there something the school does in your school districts, the schools in your school district, to make it known to the kids right off the bat that, listen, bullying obviously is not okay. We have a strict anti-bullying policy. Is there an assembly or like a lesson or something of that nature that is given to kids so they know right away that, hey, this is not okay?
Yeah. Well, we do all of those things. The beginning of the year is always about setting up, rules and procedures, and we're striving to create an environment of belonging because everybody wants to feel connected. So we spend a lot of time talking about how do we support each other and develop relationships that are healthy. We have some common practices that to help support that. I mean, simple things like greeting kids at the door and greeting them by name. We start every class period with just a couple minutes to talk about something good that's going on, to sort of set that tone that's more positive, and focus on ways that we engage students, because particularly at junior high, you might have to work a little bit harder to get kids excited about learning things and be involved in that process. And then having them leave us with that sense of closure and launching them into the rest of their day. We do assemblies and special speakers and try to incorporate those lessons about what does positive character look like among each other with peers. We have student leaders. We have a program called WEB, Where Everyone Belongs. So our 8th graders become the leaders on campus and particularly help mentor our 6th grade students so that
mentoring program
so they feel welcomed and feel a part of the school, and they kind of help show them the way, because 6th graders, of course, would rather hear that from an 8th grader than from an adult. So, and then, you look at all different kinds of ways to recognize positive behavior and celebrate the successes of kids as often as you can.
You have how many schools in the Enterprise District, elementary district?
We have 9 schools. 2 of them are K-8. We have just the one junior high, and then we have a homeschool program that's K-12.
So talk about, to spin this obviously from a different light, the positives. We're in October, so school's been in session about 2 months now. The positives that you're seeing and hearing from these 9 schools in your district that encourage you as we go through the school year.
Yeah. Well, certainly lots of student growth in academics and learning, but exploring what their interests are, getting involved in things like sports and clubs. This week we have all of the 5th graders in our district going up to Lassen Park. They had 2 trips. One was all about science and geology, and what a great resource we have with Lassen being right here in our backyard. And then this week they went again, and this was more focused on team building. How do we work together with each other? And just to be able to offer those kinds of activities for kids where they really get to have a different kind of experience outside of the classroom is that much more rewarding, I think, and special for them.
Now, to mitigate bullying, again, there's a lot of things you can do. We've said a couple of them. If you were to prioritize one thing in particular that needs to be done, what would you say that is?
To prevent bullying?
Yeah.
Well, I think,
or mitigate it. Can't really prevent it.
Yeah. Well, it's always twofold, because you can have consequences, but that's only part of the story. So we always have to hold kids accountable for their behavior, just like adults need to be. But the other side of that is really building a culture that is positive and safe, and focuses on teaching them the skills they need to be successful in life, because we want to send our kids on to high school not only prepared to handle the academics, but that they know how to get along with each other, how to communicate their needs, and so another piece of that is really making sure we give kids the message that they need to speak up. If something's not right, if they're not feeling safe, if someone's being mistreated, they speak up on their own behalf or on the part of someone else who they're seeing that happen to, so that we can take care of it.
And when cases do happen, situations unfold on the playground or whatever, you obviously as a district and as each school would encourage, like you said, the student to speak out, but if the parent hears about it, the parent's best route in making something happen, positive change, is not to probably go on social media and voice frustration, but to come even see you, just come to the district office and say, here's what's happening, here's what I want to address.
Yeah, social media doesn't generally do a lot to help solve problems.
No.
So we want to work with families and help make things better. So reach out to your school. They want to work with you, and they'll take the time to solve those issues to the best of our ability and make things better for everybody.
Right, because you can't, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't handle a situation if you're not aware of the situation, right? You got to make sure that you know about it. So just opening the floor to you, just talk about obviously what's transpired since this report came out, the difficulties, the situation. Parents got upset, right? They see this report, and parents kind of build on one another, add fuel to the fire. Just give me your honest assessment, like you were saying. This is not something you guys tolerate. This is not something you see that extent, and also you handle everything that comes your way, correct?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, we can't ever predict what students may do. We can't prevent all that misbehavior. So it's really all in how we respond. And that response is always an opportunity to learn, to understand each other better, to grow through that. That isn't always comfortable.
Sure.
But learning and growing and changing is not a comfortable process.
No.
I mean, in order to, learn, even in school, when you're learning a new idea, your brain has to be a little uncomfortable until it grows to the point of, okay, now I can understand this new, math concept that I didn't get before. So that's just part of the process. I guess I just would love for people to know about all the incredible things our kids are doing. Despite the challenges of growing up today, they're still kids, and we get to see them laugh and play every day, and we have incredibly dedicated staff that really devote themselves to doing the very best for our kids that they can. So I feel like they're in great hands.